Welcome to Titular Characters. In this 64th issue, we're featuring Shawn Richison. Shawn is a cartoonist known for Drive, A Trip to Rundberg, Against the Wall, and most recently, FISK, the substitute for Caliber Comics. He is currently working on Origin Point, a science fiction horror story, as well as Legend of the Sunset People, which narrates the myths and legends of the Ojibway. Shawn lives in Barrie, Ontario with his wife Lena and 3 boys, Jack, Will, Miles, as well as an adorable cat named Gary. And today, we're going to talk to him about comics. This is going to be fun. Hey, Shawn. Welcome to the show. So what you working on?
Wow, I am so excited to tell you about this. This is a book that I started cooking up with a guy. Well, he cooked it up. I have a friend named Russell Lissau, and he is a writer. He's done like the Batman strikes, so like some other DC stuff, and just a ton of creator-owned stuff. And the way he usually operates is he just finds guys that he wants to work with and asks them out, and then, we go on a date and we do our thing. And he tapped me for a segment of a story a few years ago that was pretty cool. He kind of did a triptych of like past, present, and future of this romantic relationship and how it might exist in these 3 timelines. I got to do the future one, which was pretty fun. It was like an alien invasion resistance setting, which was like, it's pressing all my buttons right there, right? So Russell said, hey, let's do this book. If you're interested, I got this book called The Hard Ways that's been kicking around in my head for a while. And it's about this kind of kidnapping caper set in Vegas that kind of goes wrong. And I'm like, oh, yes, please. So he sent me over the script. I read it. It's 5 issues, just like all done in one. Like it'll be about like 100-page graphic novel when it's all done with 5 20-page chapters. And each issue kind of unveils something new about this setting and the characters in this scenario, which I love because he's really, he starts as a basic kind of kidnapping plot, and then it kind of just steadily unravels from there. And I've been having a ball drawing that, and we're hooked up with a fellow named Josh Southall, who's a letterer, and a friend of mine, Juan Romera, who's the colorist, and we're self-publishing it and putting it on Comixology. We got 2 issues already up. 3rd issue is imminent, I should say. 4 and 5 TBA, but we're grinding away on that. And, we don't have any backing. It's just a completely independent gig that we just thought, like, this is a story we wanted to tell, so let's do it.
Awesome. Okay, so I figure you have been in the industry for over 20 years now, and you know everything there is to know about collaborations and what makes them tick. So how do they work?
Yeah, I've worked with dozens and dozens of different writers, different teams. I worked with different colorists. I've done a lot of my stuff, predominantly kind of black and white, and I do most of that line art myself. So I've been doing penciling and inking my own thing for probably, like, I don't know if I've ever had an inker, to be honest. Like, I'd love to work with someone. Yeah, no, but it was just like, I can pencil, I can try inking. Well, it kind of looks okay. So, I went ahead and just did it. And a lot of guys are doing that now. I know a lot of guys, especially the guys who work digitally, right? Because it's just all part of the same process, really, not to say, and I don't want to take away from any inkers who do that, just that, there are plenty of inkers who are way better than me. And they would probably make my stuff look way better too. But to me, it's part and parcel of the same kind of sphere. Like color is a whole different ballgame for me. And again, some people are fantastic. They do the whole shot, right? They can color, they can pencil, they can ink. I can color, I do color, but not like, I mean, some of these Da Vinci's that are out there working these days. But I've done a lot of that. I've done like a lot of lettering. I've done a lot of where you kind of just wear many hats because you're in indie comics. So, when you say I've been in the industry for 20 years, it's true. My first stuff came out around 2001. So that's 20 years ago. I've collaborated with a lot of writers. I've collaborated with some letterers. It's always fun to see someone else take a stab at your stuff, or like, how they would put the word balloons and the captions and the sound effects and everything onto the page. And you look at them and you go, geez, I wouldn't have even thought of doing that. And it's a beautiful art. Like, and it's, I've seen some guys do it and it blew my mind. It's like, oh, right. And that's how you learn about stuff, right? I mean, especially when it's your own thing. So I think, like, to be a good collaborator, yeah, man, have an open mind. You have to look at what other people are bringing to the table and see what they can show you, see what you can learn from them. So I think that's number one.
So is there a procedural difference between the collaborations where you're just really excited all the way through and the ones where you're just sort of counting the days before you're done?
Money, I guess. Like, you know what? Like, I've had a few of those gigs where I thought it was going to be really cool, and then you sort of you just fill in the boxes, right? Like, you just have to. It could be work, just like anything else. Like, it could be like going to sell refrigerators or whatever it is that you do that you might not love. But I think also, yeah, you mean collaborations fall apart too, right? I mean, not every project is a finished project. That's like 98% of projects in indie comics. Like, you put something together, you got this team, you're going to do it, you're excited out the gate, this is going to be cool. And then, like, no, that's not what I thought this was going to be. So, maybe things you just sort of walk away and shake hands and say, well, it's not for me. That's probably the healthiest way to do it if you can. Especially if there's money up front, finish the job. Be professional. But if you're doing something where you're like, hey, let's see what we can get off the back end of this thing, and we're buddies and we'll do this, and I think maybe you have to know when you've reached your limit, because honestly, Eva, if you don't have a love for what you're creating, I think that you won't put whatever that magic is into it that's going to get people interested. So it's better not to doing that, and give that to someone else who maybe will come at it with a different set of eyeballs and think, oh yeah, this is for me, this is my thing. So
do you feel like that has the kind of impact that really just measures through on the final title? Does the collaboration itself affect how readers feel about any given book?
I think it can be. I mean, I don't know that that's like a hard and fast rule either, because I'm sure that there's stuff. I know that there's stuff that I have put like my heart and soul into, and I was excited all the way through. Those are the jobs that I try to take, is the ones where I know it's going to be a thing. Like, I'm going to see this through to the end, because like I want to get to me, a lot of times it's a scene at the end, the penultimate or the payoff, maybe the climax of the book, where there's like some fancy action scene, or the big reveal, whatever it is, and that's where I want to draw that, right? I want to get my characters to the point where they're gonna, here's the twist, and that keeps you going through here's 3 pages of talking heads that I wish I didn't really have to draw, but I'll find a way to make this interesting. But then the next one is the gunfight, so let's go to that scene too, And I think that's also part of like keeping it fresh, where you find the things that you love to draw and you kind of use them as a reward for the things that you're like, well, I'm not crazy about drawing all these horses riding motorcycles, but that's going to be really hard. And they all have thumbs. But, you get past that, and then you're like, here's that desert scene that I was excited about. This is my break. I'm going to take a break and just draw cacti. Anyway, so like, as long as you're excited and going through it, like, you get to the end or whatever, someone like, takes a look at that and goes, meh, I don't know. It's not for me. And that's cool, man. Not everything is for everybody, right? And I think that's like one of the big things in fandom right now that just it kind of drives me crazy. Like, I'm on Twitter, as obviously that's how we met, on Twitter, and everybody's on Twitter, right? And what's the number one thing that you see on Twitter? It seems like, this was terrible because here's this thing this piece of pop culture, this Star Wars movie, this Marvel comic, this DC show, whatever it is that you're into, this Doctor Who season. And it was terrible because they did this. Oh, it was terrible because they made it a female doctor. It was terrible because, it was a ripoff of Wrath of Khan or whatever. And it's like, great, I get it. You hated it. It wasn't for you. You know what? I loved it. Can you just not yuck in my yum? How about you tell me about the things you love? Maybe you'll turn me on to something that I'm gonna be part of my canon now, and I'll be a rabid fanboy for that thing as well. And that's, there's a very strong sense of entitlement, I think, with fandom a lot of the time, where if it wasn't exactly the thing they were expecting, it was terrible. Yeah, and that's up there.
Okay, but on the other hand, there's criticism, and then there's criticism. Like, there's the stuff that everyday fans give you, and then there's the stuff that, for lack of a better word, there's this group of culture war tourists. They don't read comics, they don't do anything. And unless you're one of the creators that has come out explicitly against political correctness, they're going to hate everything you do.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, there's so many squeaky wheels, right? And that's just what happens. But yeah, but I mean, I welcome valid criticism. Hey, I didn't like how this guy, he didn't seem to have the consistency drawing his figures from panel to panel. Or when he drew that car, it didn't look like a Lamborghini, it looked like a Volkswagen, but it was supposed to be a Lamborghini. I'm all for that stuff. That's fine. But when it comes to just the hate for no good reason, that's where I kind of think, you know what? Go. I just move on. I mute or block and on with my day. So,
yeah, it's all you can do, really.
Yeah, but you know what? There's plenty of great stuff out there as well. People who are telling you about great stuff too, and those are the things I live for. Like, I think it's kind of fun. I kind of follow exploring hashtags every so often. Like, the Loki show just dropped, and I'll follow the Loki hashtag, and it's just post after post about how amazing this is and how much they love it and blah 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 blah. So yeah, and I just eat that up with a spoon. I love that stuff, and I love it when people say it about my stuff too. Feel free to say it about my stuff also.
Awesome. So, do you have a thought on what drives you creatively?
Oh man, like fear of failure is pretty significant, I think. But the older I get, the more I kind of think, am I there now? But because the realization, I think when you're young, you kind of look at it and you say like, okay, I want to do comics. I want to do comics professionally. I mean, I've been wanting to draw comics since I was probably 7 years old, right? Like as a job. I had no idea at 7 like what that entailed, but it was something that I thought like, this is a cool job, and like I just really actively pursued that for a long time. Obviously, I had some detours in life with I wanted to be in a band in high school. You kind of fall out of comics and you're like, oh, there's girls. They don't think that comics are cool. So what is cool?
See, what I want to know is what girls everybody's been hanging out with. It's just crazy.
I think it's like the general idea of girls when you're a teenage boy is like they're not going to like comics. Instead of being smart about it and saying like I know a lot about comics and I can draw and like I'm going to go find the girls who like comics. I was like, I don't think girls like comics. So what else do I could play guitar. I'm going to be in a band, So I kind of like gave up about 8 years of my life of just like, this is what I want to do professionally. Also, sleeping in late seemed like kind of fun, going out and partying and then sleeping in late. That seemed like it would be a good career choice. It wasn't, by a spoiler. So then, you kind of try to figure out, okay, how do I make money at this? And the way to make money at it is, of course, work for Marvel or DC, and they have 2 jobs available, right? So, not to say that lots of people don't end up working for Marvel and DC. It does seem, but I mean, I think if you look at the ratio of people who are trying to work for Marvel and DC and the people who are working for Marvel and DC, it's probably a pretty slim margin. So, that's one way. And this is, of course, we're talking 20 years ago, the internet was barely a thing at that time. That was kind of, I have to say, like, that was sort of the genesis of where my comic creating sort of took off, was when sort of these message boards and that sort of thing started cropping up. And you would go to the Bendis board, or you go to the, I was part of the Engine for a while, which was the post-Warren Ellis forum. I know we're not supposed to say his name, but that guy. And I mean, it's history, right? It's where I was. So, and then, Pencil Jack was an artist and writer forum that you could like hang out at and kind of collaborate online. And that's sort of where some of the earliest gigs came from. And part of the drive is, okay, I want the brass ring. I'd love to work for Marvel DC. Who doesn't want to draw Spider-Man? Part of the drive is, I want to be better than that other guy. I want people to like I want more likes, right? I mean, if you want to put it in sort of the modern Instagram era terminology, I want more likes on my art. And then as you age and you mellow and you start realizing like, yeah, this is like more of an uphill thing, a battle, if you will, a slog. It can be, it's a long haul. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? Start thinking, well, that stuff's not that important. So then you have to find different things to drive you. So, for me right now, where I am in my life, I have a day job. I do ambulance dispatch. I'm relatively good at it. I think it helps people. I get paid decently, pay a mortgage with it. I can raise my kids with it. Support myself, my wife. Well, she also works, so I'm not taking credit for that, but you know what I mean? Like I keep everything stable with that. And then I carve out that time, to continue to do this. And then why, right? Like that's the question. Why? What's the drive there? Well, it's because there's something inside artists, writers, musicians, the arts, that's just, you have to create and you have to put something out there. There's a story that's in you that you want to tell people, you want people to be aware of. Maybe it's like some kind of instinctive, like if I don't make my mark, if I don't leave something behind, I won't have existed. Maybe it's something like really weirdly deep ingrained like that. Or maybe it's just like some sort of intuition or some sort of instinct that you just think, okay, I want to do this. I've got no other recourse. And that's what it feels like sometimes. It's just like some days I put the pencil down and I say, you know what, after this project, maybe I should just spend more time with my kids and my family and, watch more TV and take up crocheting or something. And then, a day passes and I'm like, why haven't I drawn? Start scratching at your arms and like a junkie, So like, yeah, okay, I got to get back to it. It's just in there. I don't know what it is. That was a really long-winded way to say I don't know, I guess.
Oh no, don't even worry about it. This is what we call good radio. So you have been working on multiple titles for a long time. Do you have different processes between Comixology and print? Is it something you really put a lot of thought into, or is it just sort of something that you just do naturally as part of the process?
You know what? Actually, there was I don't know if you know, Mark Waid has a site called Thrillbent. It's like a website that he did. It was all his indie stuff. Well, I don't know, all his indie stuff. It was an indie strip that he did. I think I'm trying to think if he did it with Peter Krause or who he was doing it with. But anyway, he came up with this kind of novel approach to webcomics, wherein you could really, I really loved it because you could control sort of the passage of time. It was done in more or less like a horizontal, like a widescreen, like almost like if you would a 3-panel gag a day type of strip. But it didn't necessarily have to be, I think it was a little higher, a little taller than just like a strip, but it was like, I guess, monitor sized essentially, right? Instead of doing it as we think of comics as being like taller than they are wide, like a book, it was kind of turned on its side as if you would be looking at a widescreen version of an iPad or something. And the cool thing about it is you flip through, as you hit the advance button, it would not necessarily take you to just the next page. Sometimes things in the panel would change. For example, there was like a zombie story, which I can't remember who came up with it, but it was like kind of a post-apocalyptic thing, and they did a gag where you were sort of looking over the guy's shoulder at this person who just passed away, and he turns, looks at the camera, so now he's not looking at the dead person. As you tap it, the same panel appears, but now the zombie's jumping up and biting him in the neck, right? So it was kind of, you could control the pace of the viewer. And that was really interesting to me because now you're drawing all these individual insets that go over top of each other. Well, how do you translate that to a print book, right? That's very tough. You can't do that necessarily, right? So without having extra pages and pages, and where do you put the page turn? Because that's the thing that you always have to think about when you're talking about print comics is like, okay, well, you want the big reveal to be as they turn the page, right? So that zombie's going to jump up and bite you. You want it when they flip the page and, oh, there's that image. Okay, that's the surprise, right? But you could do that digitally much easier because you just redraw part of that page. You don't necessarily draw a whole new page. So that's tough. If you're trying to do a print version of that story and then the digital version in that manner. Now, that didn't really take off, I don't think, as well as much as I would have liked. I think that, to me, that was like the digital version of comics that I was like, okay, yeah, man, I'm on board. That's cool. It's just really a unique marriage of the digital space and the tools that you have there and the format of comics. Somewhat like when Scott McCloud a few years and years ago was talking about the infinite canvas, where because you can scroll, you could just draw this giant long tapestry of comics, and then you could scroll down and down and down and down. It's kind of like that, only you're just using like HTML or Java or whatever to just flip the image. Anyway, that's not something you can necessarily do in print. So if you are trying to modify that same story, what you would likely do is you maybe have a stat panel where it's the same image, but that would change your orientation and everything. So it's not just scanning that page in and then putting it on the web. Now you have to alter all of that. So that's where it would get tough. But I think generally it's pretty easy because we still live in this comic collector print ideal, where people want the tactile sensation. I get that. I'm all for it. I love reading a book, flipping through the pages. So that's print is first. And what Comixology has done is they've created this guided view thing, because when you are reading on, your 4-inch cell phone, you're not going to maybe get all the details. So you can like pop up these panels and expand them. And so they do a lot of that work for you, but it's just taking that print page and just sort of cutting it up. And when you submit your work to them, I don't know. I can't speak to how like the big publishers, they may have an agreement where they say, well, we want it to look like this, to present this way, so we'll do the guided view and just send you the final thing. But as an indie guy doing, you're submitting something to Comixology and they're putting it on their website, they do all the guided view stuff for you. So it's actually very simple. You just draw the comic for print, and then you hand it in to them, and they adapt it essentially. So there, depending on your approach, it can be a lot of work. It could be a lot of rethinking, revisiting, kind of trying to figure out panel shapes and sizes and page turns and all that, and then adapting that to digital. Or it can be very simple if you're just doing it plain old for print and then handing it off to Comixology.
So what do you create with? Are you an artist that creates things with pen and paper, or do you work digitally? Is there some combination or maybe a hybrid approach that you feel saves you time and gets the job done in the most effective way?
Like I'm a hybrid guy. Yeah. So like I see these guys who work digitally, and they just make just gorgeous stuff, and I'm just, what brush are you using? And what program are you using? What brush are you using? Because when I hack it out on my tablet, like I have one of these, it's like a lower end. It's not like a Cintiq or whatever, the big, it's like kind of like the Russian knockoff or whatever. But it does the job, right? It's good for coloring. I really like it for coloring. It's very intuitive when it comes to, using a pen. You're using a pen. It's the same kind of thing, but I just can't get that finesse that I can with brush and ink. So the way that my typical process to break it down is like, I'll thumbnail in pencil in a sketch pad or whatever, right? And just kind of, I'll grab let's start at the beginning. I get the script. Somebody sends me a script. I read through the script. I read through it a couple of times. I highlight the things that I really think are going to be important. Depending on who you're working with, lots of times they'll have everything laid out like panel 1, 2, 3, 4. They might be very specific about what they want, in which case I look at that and I think, is that going to work? That's not really how I see it. Most times I throw it out, pick my own, what's in my head, right? Because that's what, there's a big conversation on Twitter right now, which is hilarious to me. I never get involved in these things, but it's like the writers are the genesis of this thing, and the artist is just like, supporting their vision. And then the artists are saying, no, you guys write a draft, and then we put that onto paper. So that's our vision that's going on. So it's like that constant pull and push of the tug of war of writer artist. I don't really get involved in that stuff, but I do definitely, I just take my own path through it. As long as I'm following what's in the script, and there's, okay, this guy's talking and this guy's talking, that guy's talking, they're all on the page, and, any important action, he pulls out his gun. Okay, that's got to be in there. That's all in there. I just send it back to the writer and say, hey, I made a few changes. What do you think? And, 9 times out of 10, depending if you're working with a decent guy, he'll be like, oh yeah, no, that works too. Or lots of times they're very generous about it, and they'll be like, oh, you know what? That makes it even better. Yeah, it's nice to hear. But nobody wants their toes stepped on either way, but generally you're collaborating, right? So if there's that push and pull a little bit, and sometimes, yeah, very much is like, I know I saw this way. Can you change this back? It's like, yeah, okay, I'll do that for you. So that's why the layouts are kind of important, like the thumbnails, you do that, the roughs. And I just do that all just freehand, kind of like off the top of my head, where are these figures going to go and what are they going to look like? And then once I kind of get that cemented. Okay, this is a lock where this is where we're going with the penciling. I'll go and I'll hunt for reference. I'll shoot reference if it's a tough pose that I can't really get. Sometimes I'll use like those little plastic model guys, that you see on Facebook. They're advertised. Maybe not on your algorithm, but like every artist definitely has seen these little plastic model guys. I bought a set. They're fun. The poses aren't always like what they should be, but whatever. You work with what you have. There's a couple of great modeling websites. There's one called Magic Poser where it's pretty user friendly, where you can just like move. They give you a character, and it's kind of a generic like human. Move it around, a little man or a little lady or whatever, and you adjust them to the pose that I can't. What does it look like when Spider-Man hangs upside down with his legs this way? And okay, that's how it looks. There's a variety of tools, and then I'll just kind of get that all out like on my board, and then I just draw, kind of pencil the page from there. And a lot of that is the digital sourcing, right? Like I'm taking digital photos and I'm printing them or light boxing them or whatever I need to do. I'm using these digital tools on the web, and then you scan it. Then I ink it, because I work in a blue pencil. So this is where the hybrid kind of comes in. So I work in a blue pencil, and then because I hate erasing, it's just so time consuming and it hurts my wrist, so I don't do it. And then I ink over top of that, and I scan that in to Photoshop, what have you. And using the tools in Photoshop, I'm able to adjust the levels and everything, and just get a very tight, clean set of inks off of that. So it is actually physically inked with a brush. I started with a dip brush, the Windsor Series 7, which was like the thing that like all the famous artists that worked at Marvel back in the day used to use. I graduated eventually to like a refillable brush pen, because it's just super easy. I just buy packs of these refills, and I've got this little, I unscrew it and put them in, and away I go. I don't have to carry around I've spilled the ink all over my studio so many times in the past that it was just like not worth it anymore. I get the same line. I've figured out how to get a good line with it. So it's great. I'll use some technical pens, like, for sort of more deadlines, like, lines that don't have to have any kind of ebb and flow to them, like not live or life lines. They don't have like organic stuff, with heavy shadows and stuff. You want to brush, but then like, you're drawing a building, you want straight, boring bricks. Well, that's easy to do with just a rapidograph or something like that, right?
There's a brush for that.
There's a brush for that. Sure there is, yeah. There's always a brush for that. So, I mean, it's just a mix of whatever's around. And then when I scan it in, I just suck out I just adjust the layers to get rid of all the color pencil behind. And I'm left with these nice, crisp black lines, and which then I send to the colorist, and they make it look good. So from there, I'm set.
So how do you approach inclusion and representation in your work?
Oh, yeah. You know what? It is a fine line. So I am as cis het male white. Like I'm the enemy. I'm the boring guy. Whatever you want to call it. Like I'm that guy that, like, you know what? I got all the privilege. Let me just put that anywhere. What's the thing? The gag? Anywhere in time, I can go back in time to any point in time, and I'm still sitting at the table. So I understand that. I try to keep that forefront in my mind, particularly when I'm telling stories. Now, I also want to tell stories that are going to include everyone. So it is kind of it is a fine line, I think, to walk, where you're just like, I don't want to pander and say, hey, like, what, we're going to add this ethnicity, and we're going to add some trans people, and we're going to add this and that, because we want to get those dollars, right? But if there's no good reason for this person to be white or male or whatever, because lots of times I'll brainstorm with the writer. Like I've done my fair share of co-creation right? And it's better when it's collaborative. But the great thing is from being the artist is that you get the script and it's like, you're flipping through and it's like, okay, yeah, okay. White guy. And I just email the writer. I'm like, okay, this dude's going to be black because there's no reason for him not to be black. And this dude's going to be Chinese. I'm going to just make him Asian. I don't know. And that's going to be a woman now. Okay. And, and like the writer's like, oh, well, I didn't think of that, but okay. And it's like, yeah, just because I don't want to draw like 47 Steve Rogers in this book. I want to draw different characters too, right? That's more interesting, right? So it is fun to go through and do that. And just because that's the world I live in. I don't know about everybody else, but I walk down the street and I'll tell you honestly, in Canada, because I'm up in north of Toronto, it's pretty white. Like honestly, it really is. When you're in the city of Toronto, it's not. And I've been in the city of Toronto plenty of times. And, you might do a book that's set in like, I don't know, some northern outpost town. And yeah, it's probably mostly going to be white. But then also, don't forget, there's going to be a lot of Native people there too, right? Because that's where, like, up north, that's where a lot of Native people are, right? And there's going to be Native people there. There's going to be, and I work with like lots of people who are different ethnicities. So why wouldn't they just exist in my stories, right? So I keep it in mind, but I don't want to come off as like, oh, well, we have to include this guy because, right? And it's not like, I'm not worried about someone calling me out on that. I'm more concerned that I'm going to be pushing people away that are interested in reading the book, and they're just thinking like, well, I don't feel like this is justified or this is realistic or this is whatever. They're just trying to get me. And it's like, no, we're not trying to get you, right? We're just trying to include everybody. So inclusivity is like, it is always foremost in my mind. And then, every so often you kind of have to step aside, right? Like, I have a conundrum right now. I'm working on a book. Have been working on a book for a long time, and it's set pre-colonialism, so it's all Native characters, which is cool. But online, I've had a little bit of criticism with, why are you telling that story? And that's a solid question. Why am I telling that story? Well, at the time I started telling that story, I didn't see any other stories like that. But now I feel like, maybe am I taking a seat at the table that I don't belong to, and maybe I should let someone else tell that story. So it's kind of a push-pull. It's like, I don't know, am I going to abandon that project? Because I started it with the best of intentions of like, this was a story that I thought I would be interested in telling and I would be good to tell. And now time has changed. Things have changed since I started writing and drawing that book. And now I have to consider, well, maybe I'm not the best person to tell that story. Maybe someone else should tell that story. So fortunately, there's no money involved. There's no publisher involved or anything as yet. But and I might just finish it just as like okay, I don't want to leave it unfinished. But so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that one goes. But yeah, like that's That's an excellent question. Wow, that's a hard question. I think that's a hard question when you're like as default, or no, that's a bad example, or bad word, as privileged position as I'm in. It's a hard question. It's like, what is the right approach? And I think we're still all asking that. We're all struggling with that. We're all working and trying to figure out what is the best approach for this, right? And you hope that you're doing the right thing, and that's all you can do.
I think the trick is just sort of being aware of that. That's the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wasn't aware. That was the funny thing, right? I mean, like I said, that I started that one book. I wasn't aware that there could be this kind of impact or this kind of issue with it. And I mean, I'm kind of halfway done it, and I just thought, and then I was just posting online, and somebody kind of came at me one day, and I was like, "Whoa, wait, well, you know what? That was not my intent." And they're like, "Well, you should think about what your impact is, though. It doesn't matter what your intent is, what's your impact. And it's like, okay, I got to think about that. So, but then I've had the other experience at shows when I've been selling, because I have a couple of issues of the book done, and I've been selling it at my table because it's just like, it's an indie thing. It's a me thing. It's just a private, personal project that I've been working on. And I thought it would be a fun story to tell, which is what I do a lot. I do a lot of that. And I've had great response where people said, and I should say, I guess Native people have come up and said, "Oh man, love this. This is a cool story. I've never seen anything. I haven't seen anything like this." The nice thing is, now that I'm aware that there are other publishers and stuff like that, I can give them a tip and say, "Hey, well, if you like this, you should check out that." So that is one of the ways that I do try to kind of pass along the knowledge that I've gained about it. So, yeah.
So, how do you make a story memorable and distinct? Is there a formula or a calculus for it?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think that you can sort of take a look at something. If you get an idea and you're like, "Oh, this is a cool idea," and you can hunt around. And that's sort of where it begins and ends for me, is I hunt around and look around and say, like, who's doing this? Anyone else doing this? No? Oh, all right. Well, I'm going to go ahead with it. And maybe it's not, going to be a hit. I haven't had any huge hits or anything. But maybe this one is, maybe I don't see anyone telling this story. But then there's just things that are in your zone, right? Like I'm big into historical fiction. I'm big into, Vikings and pirates and fantasy. I grew up as a Conan kid, reading all the Conan the Barbarian stuff and loving all of that stuff. And, sort of have that in my DNA, creative DNA. So that's the stuff that I sort of gravitate to. The sci-fi stuff. I love the sci-fi stuff, crime stuff, anything that's kind of genre stuff that is not necessarily like capes. Although I did grow up on superheroes, but I just think everybody, there's a couple of people that are doing that really well right now, named Marvel and DC. So I'm going to let them do their thing. And then I can tell all these other stories. But in terms of like, what is it about this story that's going to stick in people's heads? I mean, a good twist always helps. If you can think of a good twist, that's great. Sometimes you get that and you're like, oh, this is a great twist. I mean, I think, what's his name? M. Night Shyamalan he's created his whole career as on the good twist, right? So if you can do that, you might stick around. If you have superlative art, I don't claim to be a superlative artist, but I mean, if there's some artists out there, you just look at what they're doing and like, I don't even understand how that came out of a pen, but that's amazing. And you know what? I will follow that to the end. So that sticks in your head. You're like, oh, I remember that scene. I remember that panel. That was so great. I mean, I think sometimes it's production. Sometimes you just get a really cool, look at the Vault line. Man, their trade dress, their design. I mean, the interiors, the stories, everything else is great. I'm not putting any of that down. But what I'm saying is that, what's his name? Tim Daniel, who's doing all of their trade dress and their design work, is like, whoosh, blows my mind every single time I see what he's doing. But I mean, you never know. I don't know if there's an actual formula to it or anything, because if I did, I would be like way more successful. But there's certainly things that you can look for, and you try to do those as best you can, and hopefully, you come up with something that's going to connect with people.
This is one topic that is on everybody's mind in the creator community right now is, are you developing comics or are you building intellectual property that can be licensed or reused in other mediums like film or television or any number of other things? And you had, I thought, some really interesting things to say on this topic.
Oh, we shoot my mouth off on Twitter again. Okay, so I think that if you are willing to put the work in, whether it's for a paycheck um, or because you're just passionate about it, but you're going to complete some sort of product that is creative story that is fantastic, like that's complete enough that they think that they can adapt it into something. Um, you know, there's your dues. You've just paid your dues. You've just spent hours and hours and hours at a drawing board or in front of a computer typing your script up or doing all the research for that. And that's enough right there. I don't think I don't think anybody needs to ask you for your credentials any further than that point right there. And hey, if that is something that is cool enough, that's got that calculus that you suggested earlier, that gets into some producer's head and it makes it to a studio and it makes it to production and they cut you a check, you've just paid for the rest of your comics making career. And now you can just do whatever you want. If you don't want to draw comics anymore, sit on a beach and drink Mai Tais, more power to you. If you want to make, all Polygon shaped comics, absolutely, math
Polygon shaped
whatever.
Comics. Okay, I support that completely.
I know. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like what would be like the, what was the one that came out a few years ago, Asterius Polyp, and it was this very avant-garde kind of book. I mean, I can't remember the artist, of course, off the top of my head, but he's well known. But do what you want. If you've made it, do what you want. So I don't think there's any shame in creating an IP farm. The thing is, if it's blatant, if it's really obvious, a lot of the time, that's just a road to failure anyway. Marvel's harvesting IP that they worked on out of passion to tell these stories for 80 years. If you're like, I'm going to create a connected universe tomorrow, and I do see these posts on Facebook sometimes where the guy's like, yeah, I'm creating this giant universe with 600 characters, and it's like, oh, okay, that's a lot of work, man. Good luck. I hope it works out. It seems like it's probably not, because that seems like something that will be a cumulative effect of like 80 years of storytelling. But if you can do it by Tuesday, wow, amazing. So no, I really don't think that there's any issue with creating IP. Personally, I don't know how to make movies, so I just hand that off to whoever if somebody comes knocking. But I make comics. I like to make comics. But if somebody's happy to license it and they make a movie out of it and they want to cut me a check for a couple of mil, I'll quit my day job and just do this full time. So that's great. Yeah, let's do it. Who's, any producers?
Sorry. No, I don't, unfortunately. I do know a lot of comics people, though. Hey, babies. It's time for a commercial break, but more with Shawn Richison after this. Love yas. So, do you have a favorite single issue, story, or title of all time?
Man, that's a tough one. Well, I would say, you know what? Let me put it this way. I got into reading comics because of Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. I'm going to say it was issue 68. I can tell you the plot line because it stuck with me so strongly. The Frightful Four decide they want to find out Spider-Man's identity, and they lure him to the Statue of Liberty by shooting up a flare that looks like the Fantastic Four symbol. And then they pretend to be the Fantastic Four and they try to knock him out. And in the end, the Trapster glues his mask on because he's so annoyed with Spider-Man's quips. He accidentally glues his mouth shut. and they can't find out his identity. And I mean, that was like a beauty entry into reading comics. It was just amazing. So yeah, it was very, yeah, that was the one. Yeah, that's the one that stuck with me since the beginning. So I've read a lot of comics since then, and there are so many good ones. I'll use that one as
Awesome.
my favorite.
Awesome. So, when was the last time a comic book made you cry?
We Three, man. Have you, with the dog and the cat and the rabbit?
No, I have
I bawled
not
my
read that
eyes out.
one, but people
Oh
say
my!
that a
Oh,
lot.
Eva! Holy moly! It's heartrending. I don't know. That's an amazing series, and it made me cry. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that I get emotional about. There's a lot more that I get emotional about in animation and film these days, particularly when it comes to kids, because I have 3 little kids. So, like, anytime it's like kid in jeopardy, I'm like, so. But in comics, that stands out as like, yeah, that'll make me cry. But probably any writer and artist that really pulls off, like, yeah, like a kid dying, or like a parent dying and leaving a kid. Yeah, that'd get me tearing up probably pretty hardcore. So, yeah.
So, as a reader, what makes a comic book experience work for you? What makes a comic great?
I can accept poor writing over poor art, and I think that's because of where I sit at the table, mostly as an artist. So, good art, good coloring, a complementary coloring that works with the art style, lettering that's at least passable. If it's awkward lettering and you can't follow the word balloons and stuff, that throws me off. So all of the production stuff of it, that's important to me. And then genre. I think it has to be something that's kind of more in my wheelhouse. Like I said, like the historical fiction or the sci-fi, that kind of stuff. I'll cave it. I'll get more out of that than I will necessarily like slice of life stuff, or it's all good, but it's just doesn't speak to me the same way. So I'm an adventure comics kind of kid, so that's where I grew up.
Nice. So, is there anyone that stands out in your mind as either the most underrated or most inspiring person in comics?
Underrated or inspiring, because they're not the same thing. I mean, as far as underrated goes, God, there's so many. But it's hard to say. Like, underrated is tough for me because, like, if I know about someone, I might think they're amazing. Like, I have lots of. Here's one. I think Simone Guglielmini. He's Italian. He's done some stuff for Image.
That
It's a
is a
bunch of
deep
near
cut.
death. Is it?
It is.
Well, he's a friend of mine. So, that's the thing. Is like most of these guys that I think are underrated are like guys I know, right? Like that's what it is. But I mean, but I remember seeing his art 100 years ago, on one of those message boards, and thinking, "Wow, this guy should be working for all the big, houses right now." And I mean, I didn't realize he was Italian at the time. I didn't know he was out of the U.S., like he was out in Europe. But yeah, his stuff is amazing. He should be getting knocked on the door of way more. He's also very inspiring. So there's that too. I think Scott Chandler is underrated. Maybe he works in kind of a different space, but he's done some amazing stuff. He's a big inspiration for me as well. So there's a couple. Again, guys I know, but yeah.
That's fair. Well, Shawn, it looks like we're up against the end of the show. Are you ready for the fun part?
Yeah, tell me about it.
Excellent. Okay, let's start with an easy one. What's your favorite food?
Oh, pizza. That's easy. Yeah. Hawaiian if possible. I know, pineapple. I'm
There you
gonna
go.
pick a side. There we go.
Personally, I think all pizza should have pineapple on it, just in general. Gonna put that out there. So, would you say you're a cat or a dog person?
Cat.
Nice.
I've always had cats. I have a cat. Probably at the top of the show, you heard him meowing in the background to be let out. But yeah,
Nice.
definitely a cat guy. I mean, dogs are cute and everything, but just, I don't know, something about that. And this is a terrible metaphor, lone wolf aspect of a cat that you just, I think is pretty cool.
Neat.
So
what's the best swear word?
fuck. I hope I can say it. Said it now. It is the best swear word because it is the most versatile swear word. So it's basic and it can be used in everything.
Okay, that's fair. Fuck is a very, very common favorite. A lot of people like it. What do you think is your favorite use of a word like fuck?
My favorite. What the fuck? That's it. Yeah, like exasperation. Exasperation is where I use it most frequently. I'm exasperated a lot.
You know, it's really funny. I forgot, when I was writing the interview questions, that when you take swear words out of context and you put them into an interview where they just sort of seem random, they make me giggle every time. So where do you find joy?
My kids, I think. Right now, it's like my kids, my wife, family. Beauty. This is all the cheesy stuff, of course. This is all the easy. I'm an easy guy. I am the blandest, whatever. But like, yeah, beauty, like nature, natural beauty, like sunsets, like that kind of stuff is. I can just stare at that stuff. I've always been that guy. I can sit out in nature and just be like surrounded by trees. I grew up in the woods, so it's always been part of me. But yeah, that's the stuff that keeps me going. If I need to recharge my zen, that's where I go for it. So just hanging out with my boys and my wife, and just it's a quiet time. Jazz music, love jazz. Put on, oh yeah, and it doesn't even have to be like, I'm a Coltrane guy, but like it can be like the BGM music group, whatever, that does like the YouTube jazz, coffee jazz. Like I'll put it on. I don't care. I'll do it. Oh, I guess the same. That's all about the same thing. Inspiration comes from joy for me, right? If I'm stressed, I'm not going to be able to create as well as if I'm happy. So all of that's the same. It's I can't. You can't distinguish between the two of them, really.
So there you are. You're fighting with the Avengers to save the universe from Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet. You're losing. You're having a really, really rough time. Thanos is right there at the end, ready to snap his fingers when all of a sudden he has a heart attack and dies. That puts you in immediate possession of the Infinity Gauntlet. You now have the ability to mold reality, change anything in any way that you see fit. What's the first thing that you do with it?
Oh man, do I get serious about this? I'm going to get serious about this. I'm going to say I'm going to eradicate poverty. I'm going to and wealth inequality. I'm going to get rid of weapons, guns, and anything of mass destruction. I'm going to give us a sustainable future, fuel system. Maybe we'll figure out fusion, and maybe I'll get rid of Nazis. Let's just do that. Let's throw some Nazis. Gone. There we go. So
there. Yeah. Exactly.
I don't think that's a hard one. I think that's a right-minded, response.
Nazis suck.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're onto something. I think you're 100% right. That would work. Awesome. So what's next for the great Shawn Richison?
Well, we're going to finish the hard ways, keep chopping away at that. I kind of get to it when I can. decide what I'm doing with my other project, I have a bunch of other little, I have a couple of sci-fi things on the go that are imminent and probably going to come out in a year or two. One's called Origin Point, which is kind of a time travel Frankenstein thing. It's super fun. And I'm always creating new stuff. I got my eye on young adult, or middle grade rather, not young adult, middle grade books that I want to pitch, and I'm trying to talk to people about that and see if we can get something cooking with some of those ideas as well. So always got something on the go, Eva. So look for me, follow me on Twitter. You'll have all of that information. But it's at Shawn Richison, and you can. That's mostly where I'm active. You can check my website out, wonderrealm.com, and just see me around.
Awesome. Well, Shawn, I just wanted to thank you for making the time to spend with me on my humble little podcast.
Thank you for inviting me, Eva. It's been a slice, and anytime you're looking to, fill up some slots, I'm more than happy to tell you what is cooking in my world. So.
And now it's time to close the show. Imagine it. The lights beginning to come on in an empty theater. People starting to get up from their seats. The smell of popcorn crushed on the floor. And the thought runs through your head that Titular Characters is awesome, and you want to support it. Fear not, my friends. There are tons of ways to do it. You can follow Eva at Eva is Adorable on Twitter. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Castbox, or Podcast Addict. And if you're feeling super generous, you can leave some dough at buymeacoffee.com/Eva is Adorable. There, you can contribute as little as $1. And every bit goes towards paying for production and hosting of this show. How cool is that? Titular Characters is a show about the things we love. It is produced and hosted by the adorable Eva Webb. Opening theme by Antonia Marquis. Closing theme by Mikey Flash of Speed Force Music. The dreamy announcer guy who reads the credits is Donnie Underwood. That's me. Join us next time for another death-defying adventure in cyberspace. See you then!